You can take a Southern boy out of the South, but you can't take the South out of a Southern boy. But you can put him in a museum. Who is he? You'll meet him coming up next on All American People. Good morning. Welcome to All American People. This morning we're at the Horry County Museum on the corner of 5th and Main Street here in Conway, South Carolina. We're focused on the L.W. Paul Living History Farm, and we're visiting with Larry Paul, a local businessman and community servant. Good morning,
Thank you.
Larry.
Glad to be here.
Oh,
Glad to be
exciting
here.
to get you in.
Thank you.
The opportunity, of course, to be here in the museum in front of these amazing blue ribbon quilts and all of the transition that happens here at the museum is much like the transition that's happening every day out at the L.W. Paul Living History Farm.
Thank you. We try real hard.
It is a very special place. Well, we're really excited about talking about that, but a little bit about yourself, Larry. Obviously, growing up here, you grew up not far from here.
Well, I guess I'm some living history. I was born in the 40s and started trying to make a living early. We were very, very, very poor, and we learned, my father instilled in us three little simple things, and that was to work hard and to be honest and to be a good neighbor. So that's family values that I think most all of us adhere to and work to strive to do and to do for our fellow man. And we were pretty hungry, and so I was learned at an early age that we needed to do better. So I was, from the time I was 4 years old, I was trying to find a way to make a little bit of money. So I started, you gathered tobacco, and tobacco was the money crop.
Right.
And you broke the leaves at the bottom of the stalk, the first crop, and then the second, and then it took like six or 8 weeks to get from the bottom of the stalk to the top. And when you finished, that was the tips, and you were done for the year. Well, when the croppers, when I was a little boy, would leave the little leaves, this hand-sized leaves, on the very top of the stalk or stubble, you know, where I have to reach way up to get. And I'd say, Daddy, you gonna leave those? That's waste. He said, yeah. He said, I just didn't get them. I said, well, can I have them? So I would go out the last day of harvest and work way into the night to break all those leaves, take them back to the barn and string them on strings with tobacco twine and hang them in the barn under my daddy's tobacco so that I would have a little basket of tobacco to sell on the warehouse floor that my mother could use the money
Come on, Larry.
to help with the school clothes or whatever she needed it for.
At really an early age.
At early, yes ma'am, yes sir, early, I mean real early. And different things we learned to do. It's anything I could figure out to make a living. And then as a teenager, my older brothers got Duroc pigs from agriculture as a project in school. The man gave them a Duroc pig, and then out of the first litter of pigs, they'd give back 2 pigs so that it would start them with a swine business.
Right.
Well, I knew that I wasn't ever going to be a farmer anyway, but the only thing I could figure out, we got the Reader's Digest to read when I was a young, and then we got the Progressive Farmer. That was the 2 magazines. So the Progressive Farmer I studied and figured out that the best money to be out in the country was eggs, and the best chicken for the amount of feed you had to give them was the white legger. Laid the big egg with a little amount of feed. So I talked my father into loaning me $33 to buy 1 day-old biddies, 100 of them. And I started with that, and then later talked him into loaning me another 100 before they started producing, and enough to buy some wire and stuff to build it. So I did, and I gave him the money back, and of course, we had a big egg route, and when I left home, I had like 500 chickens, 17, that I gave to my mother. So it was a good thriving chicken business, and I couldn't drive, I wasn't big enough, but we would send the eggs to town, and then my older brothers were driving different ones and had an egg route that the eggs went through Conway, and Billy Joe Calhoun is still around today. Billy Joe Calhoun had a red and white store on Main Street.
Right.
And he agreed to buy all the eggs that we didn't sell on the route so we could deplete our eggs every week.
No.
So that went on for a good many years.
You were where in the pecking order of your brother? And you've got how many brothers and
I
sisters?
got three. There's three. The oldest is Bill, then Walter, then I'm third,
Right.
and then Sam, and then Esther.
So you're right in the middle.
Betty was actually Betty. My oldest sister was 7 or 8 years older, but
Right.
Bill was the oldest boy. Yeah, I'm 2 from the bottom and 3 from the
Three
top.
from the top.
Yes.
What an exciting
Yes.
position to be in, a
Yes.
big family. Now, you mentioned earlier, I knew at an early age I wasn't going to be a farmer.
Well,
What-
because it was so hard.
Yeah, but
We farmed we moved 4 times by the time I'm 4 years old. We were sharecroppers.
Yeah.
That is to say, you had a little field, but somebody else owned it, and you lived in a little wooden house on their farm, and you shared in the harvest 50-50 with them. So if you made whatever you made, you had to get half to the landowner. So we didn't. So we finally ended up with the home place when I was 4 years old. My Uncle Jim sold it to my father at a real good price, and we managed, and he fished and trapped and things to help pay for it, and so it was a little small patch of field, and we cleared mostly by hand over the next till we left home. We had like 50 acres cleared from just, I don't know, half a dozen, and not even that many to start with.
kudos to your uncle opening that door for your
Yes.
father to be able to buy that.
I think
and-
it was, if I remember right, records show $3,500, I believe he paid.
Is that right? Is that right?
Of course, that was a lot of money then too. but-
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, you think of the really living off it. We had a guest a couple months ago who highlighted that he really didn't know how poor he was when he was wearing a burlap sack to school. He thought it was normal for everybody.
Well,
Until he saw other kids not wearing a burlap sack.
Well, see, we didn't get to go to Conway because we were 12 and a half miles away. That was like a foreign country
Yeah.
almost. So we worked on the farm and went to Pauley Swamp School, which was a little wooden 3-room schoolhouse a few miles away. So that it still didn't connect us with town.
Right.
I remember a little story. My older brothers had enough money to buy a bicycle new, and I was little, and I hadn't to have quite enough money. So we come to Conway. I got $18.50 that I've saved over the whole year, and I want a bicycle. They buy a new $39 something bicycle, and Mr. Ed Ferdon here said he had one that Doc, a black guy, had painted with a brush. Came from King Street every day to work.
Right.
But anyway, I said, well, I don't have it. He said, well, I'll take 20 to you. I said, Mr. Ford, I only got $18.50. So he let me have that bicycle for $18.50. And so I got a bicycle when I was a teenager. That was a great,
Wow,
great
that would be a coup.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
that would be a coup. You know, as you think about that, there's got to be some names of people in those early years who really stand out. You can remember back to age 4. I mean, being
Oh,
able
yes,
to
yes.
think back that far, but you think through some people who really impacted you, whether it was some teacher there at the Pauley Swamp schoolhouse there, that little wooden house, or you mentioned your uncle there who really set the stage for your father, or even your older brothers. Was there somebody that you really bonded with?
Mrs. Bertha Staley was one of my early teachers at Pauley Swamp. She taught me several grades, and she was quite the lady. She was actually a Paul. She was my dad's first cousin.
Mm-hmm.
But she married a German man who was the principal that I can't say anything favorably too much for, but Ms. Bertha was a fine lady and taught me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And she was left-handed also. So.
Good, something that people may not know about you that we're
Yeah,
getting out here.
Yeah.
Those 3 traits that you said, I mean, those 3 very special qualities, that was work hard,
Work hard and be honest.
be honest,
And
right?
be a good neighbor.
Yes, yes. Can you think of examples there that really stand out in your mind of course, it sounds clear that y'all were working hard all the time.
Yes, and we had Mr. Dan Hucks was my daddy's cousin, and he lived about a mile away, and what they had, we had, and vice versa. In fact, the whole neighborhood shared, and if you had a barn to build, everybody came and built it. If something burned down, if you had anything to do, everybody worked together as a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody in the neighborhood became less fortunate, the best way to handle it was locally, not through the government. So if you knew of anybody in need, you went and took care of it. I mean, you just wanted to do that. Whatever they needed work, if they needed work, you went and do that. If it was a woman that needed wood or something that the man wasn't able, we went and did that. That's just
Wow.
what you did. That's just the way you did things.
Larry, did a lot of the families in the region have big families to work from? Did they?
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
you're
most-
number 4 of 6.
Yes, most of them did.
Right, right. Of the 6 of y'all, how many of you said clearly, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be a farmer. I want to
Well,
get out.
Of course, none of us are farmers. Now, Bill, my oldest brother, still piddles with it a little bit, but he
Right.
works. He's a carpenter and a builder and a fine man.
Yes.
But none of us actually farm because you'd have to have, where you had 6 acres, you'd have to have 1,000 now. You know,
Right.
it's a different
Right.
world.
Yes.
But we lived off the land, and it was okay. We were
That's
poorer than anybody, but that was okay.
Well, we sure want to talk about the L.W. Paul Living History Farm, but before that, clearly a lot of folks know you throughout the county through your years as a very active home builder. Share with viewers what opened the door for you to get into home building, and it sounds like it was at a pretty early age.
Yes, I worked at Conway Metal, and my best friend needed a house built, and so I helped him with the plans and submitted it out to bids, and it came back too high, and we agreed for me to build it, just try to save them some money, and we did, and it turned out great. And so I decided if the builders had to have that kind of money to build a house, that we would maybe build 10 times that many and take 1/10 of the profit.
Right.
And my goal was to do that, and I think we did that. So we completed, a year later, we had some 60 houses under construction at the same time.
My
And we were
Lord.
producing and moving a family in a house every working day for the next quarter century.
Now, Larry, you just said we were moving a family into a house every working day. So
On
5
an
days-
average.
Right. Yeah.
On an average, we would try to do one every working day. Now, we would average 4. We would get like 200 a year instead of 250.
Right,
but,
right.
But that was a lot of houses.
200 homes y'all were putting up almost exclusively in Horry County, or were you really become a regional builder?
No, 90% of them went over County. We did a few in North Carolina and a few in Georgetown County, but primarily in Horry County.
Wow, son of a gun. Well,
Oh,
was
we
there
can.
anything of its kind? I mean, this is
No,
this
no,
is
no.
pre-Syntex, pre-DR Horton.
This is pre-volume building, yes.
Right.
Yes,
What?
yes. Well,
I mean, how did you actually make that happen? How could you have?
well, you know, I met some people of integrity, and that's the thing that maybe we don't have today. I'd rather had most anybody's handshake back then than a lot of them's contract today. You had people, Tubby Hendricks ran the building department in Conway. George Bishop, a good friend, ran the brick company. Mr. Craig Walsh Sr. owned land around. Those people, James Taylor at the hardware store, those people were people of integrity. Bob Winfield, and he was the city administrator in Conway, men of integrity. All you had to do was shake hands on something. If you build this street through so-and-so, I'll put water in the sewer, or vice versa. If Mr. Winfield said do that, I did it, no question. There was never a contract. And Mr. Wall and the suppliers, George Bishop, gave
Right.
me 90-day credit
Wow.
because nobody had ever done such volume.
Right.
So they trusted me. And all these massive houses out there being built, they gave me 90 days to pay the material bills. So that gave me time to get it closed and get the money in the bank and get them paid.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So that was,
You just mentioned the word bank. You hadn't mentioned a banker's name. Was there any banker in particular? You had to be dealing with banks on a regular basis, Larry. You know, you think
when
about.
I built that first house, I got the house framed, and I knew I'd need money, not this week, but the next week for payroll.
Right.
And I went into Conway National Bank. I first went into People's National Bank right here, next door.
Right.
And Ms. Mary Hart had already told me that I could get the money, but when I go back to get the money, she gives me a stack of lien waivers and says, everybody that works on this house got to be signed this lien waiver saying they've been paid. I said, Ms. Hart, they haven't been paid.
No.
So she said, well, I'm sorry. So I went right around to Conway National Bank, sat down and took Mr. Luke Mitson that same story and told him how much I needed. And he said, how do you want that money deposited? Let it fix him a note for $8,000. And that's all I was doing. Well, I came back, moved all my stuff to Conway National.
Right.
And you'd be surprised how many $1 million has gone through that bank. And that's my bank today, Conway National, because they were good to me and they've been a good, solid bank my whole life.